All right, so I'm going to pretty much talk about, I've done a lot of Amazon talk only because I'm as intrigued as a lot of people are. Amazon to me is a really great company in terms of just what it's done in terms of retail. And I won't get into my whole complaints about retail, but I mean, it's for a number of reasons that I think those old legacy stores are gone. A lot of times customer service was bad. Stores would run out of product and have you go all the way across town to other places. Just the environment, the experience, extremely high prices for a lot of things. There's many different reasons, right? It became much more easier to buy things online. And so Amazon has done that. A lot of those old companies that couldn't adjust and adapt are gone. So this whole question of Amazon and their new HQ2 is interesting. Now, I will say that I don't think that Amazon's going to slow its presence down in Seattle at all or in this region. I don't think that any other city is going to be chosen for HQ2 in this area. I know that not only are they taking over the new Rainier building that's being built, but they're also taking over the 6-story, 1-block size Macy's store. The office is above Macy's. Macy's is on the ground floor and the basement level. But up above that is 6 floors, I believe, of office space. So they're taking over that entire building as well, which again is the first building that was the size of a city block built in Seattle. So they're taking over those 2 sites, both of which are not near the current Amazon campus in Seattle, and it allows workers to be even farther inside of Seattle. Also, Amazon has an office in Bellevue, and I believe eventually it will have an office here in Tacoma. I'm working with a group that's trying to improve Tacoma overall, just on the technology side. Doubtful that Amazon, again, would put its headquarters here. Just doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of just trying to spread its or get talent from other places. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But I do have to get through all that, I do have my prediction of where I think the HQ2 site will go. Now, no, I do not work for Amazon. I'm not affiliated with Amazon in any means or any way at all. So I want to say that. So I don't know. I could be completely off base and probably will be. But I'm going to go through and tell you the reason why I chose this particular city to be the HQ2 site, or my prediction. And that city is Atlanta. The reason why I think that Atlanta is going to be Amazon's HQ2 site is because it does several different things, right? And I'm going to go through each one of these particular points, so this might be a very long video. Not that some of the other cities that people have mentioned don't make sense. I think that they do. I think that it actually beats out. I mean, when you look at the list, some people put Atlanta at number 2, Austin possibly at number 1, but I think that Austin is not going to take it. Even though they have a tremendous amount of tech power there and they have the really business-friendly atmosphere of Texas, I think that Atlanta might take it for a few different reasons that Austin doesn't have. When it comes to weather, Atlanta is eastern without being too eastern. And what I mean by that, it's not along the ocean coastline. So it protects the city somewhat from major hurricane storms, things like that. Even though they get remnants, they're not like a Miami, for example, or Charlotte, North Carolina, which is close enough to get hit. So they're kind of insulated from hurricanes. They also are insulated a bit from major snowstorms that you would experience up in the Northeast and the Midwest and different places. Now, of course, they do get snow there every now and again. Yes, they do get ice storms, but basically bad weather can be bad for business because airports shut down a lot of times or flights are delayed, and a lot of times people have to call in from work. So I'm thinking that would be one of the reasons why most of the Northeast and Midwest is excluded, amongst other things. But Atlanta is kind of insulated from that airport. Now, this is where I think that one of many places why, or many reasons why Atlanta beats Austin and some of these other places. Atlanta has the world's busiest airport. Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is the busiest one in the world. And the other, so you can get anywhere you want to, right? Even places you've never really heard of, you can pretty much fly there from Atlanta to every place. There's also direct flights to and from Seattle. There's direct flights to and from the Eastern Seaboard, all over this country, even small towns. Bowling Green, Kentucky at one time, recently, I think a year or so ago, had flights to Atlanta. It is a hub airport in many respects. 3 different airlines call it home, one of which is Delta. Delta has a huge presence not only in Atlanta but many other places, but also in Seattle. Now here's where these two come together and why I think you're going to see why Atlanta might beat Austin and other places. Right now there's a huge war between Alaska Airlines, based out of Seattle, and Delta. Delta has been ramping up its flights in and out of Seattle to every part of the world, mainly out to Asia. So they've really been building up. The only reason why Delta can't get much bigger in terms of international flights from Seattle to other parts of Asia and some of these other carriers is because Seattle is at capacity as far as the international airport building. It is so packed that you can't actually really add too many more flights. We're fixing that and we're building a new huge terminal, but still, that's the reason why Delta can't get much bigger than what it already is. But once that's finished, you can imagine it's going to be up there. It already is. But anyway, Delta has a hub here. It has a hub down in Atlanta. Alaska Airlines has a hub here, and it also flies down to Atlanta, direct flights. I can see both airlines making a huge viable market between the two areas. Right now, it's kind of expensive to fly from Seattle to Atlanta versus some of the other places. But I see that actually changing because obviously you're going to have a lot of people having to take that route if Atlanta is chosen. So I see that as being a high positive. The other thing, the reason why I think that Atlanta will get it is due to the companies that are there. Atlanta has a load of IT talent. Is it number 1? No, but it is in the top 5. It's actually at number 4. And so that is what I mean by having the talent there. You know, in the first video, I said you have to have the talent that's already there, not just having people move in. Atlanta has the talent that's already there. So given the fact that it's number 4, it has over 1,000 multinational companies that are there. It gives you that international presence on many different scales, from tourists to companies that are there to flights all over the world. It fits the build, right? The bill. So it's a very diverse city, modern city. It's considered to be a global or world city. And given all of the networking that is done in terms of just companies that are already there, heavyweight companies, we're talking Delta, I mentioned, Coca-Cola is based out of there, UPS, Home Depot, CNN. So it is a true hub city for many different things. And companies find Atlanta a great place to do business. So I think that's another reason why. So I mentioned the IT workers. Given Atlanta is number 4 with the number of IT workers, that number is growing fast down in Atlanta. You gotta think of all the companies that are there that need IT workers for everything from building a website to maintenance on a server to working on computers to building and supporting their cloud network to setting up networks within the buildings. There's tons and tons and tons of jobs, also software and software engineers and different folks, which is the big bulk of what Amazon likes. All of that is right there clustered in Atlanta. It's in other cities too, don't get me wrong, but it's a whole combination effect. Economic power. Atlanta's GDP is like, I think, 7 or 8 in the country, which again, if you think of the size of Atlanta, it is like in the top 10 in terms of GDP. Over $300 billion or so a year is done in the city of Atlanta. So it has the money and the resources for a company. When you compare all the other companies that are there, when you compare all the other things that Atlanta has to offer, it has that power behind it, right? Sports. I mean, obviously, it has every major sports team that you can think of, or major sports franchise that you can think of there in Atlanta. The only exception, I think, with soccer, but I think they're working on it maybe. Transit. Now, this is something that surprised me. I've rode MARTA before, and I thought it was really cool. A lot of the people that I've talked to kind of give MARTA a bad, I don't know, they talk bad about it. But MARTA is Atlanta's subway system, and it used to form like a giant T. And they have built other, I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't keep flickering, but they have built other lines, not other lines, but little spurs off from it. The complaint is that the stops are in the wrong place. And when Atlanta first got the subway system, because you got to understand, back in the day, Seattle was supposed to get that subway system. And the citizens here rejected it, thinking that there's not a need for it, and they didn't want to have something built that they would have to help finance. Keep in mind, this was going to pay for the entire project, the money that was given, federal money. And people here said no. Atlanta took the money, built a subway system, and it was going to be much bigger than what it was, but they were a little concerned and they scaled it down to what it was back in the day. They have since improved it a little bit. So that gives you a little background, and there's people that can tell you much more about that than I can, but that's kind of my understanding of it. So they have a subway system, okay? Atlanta also has a great bus network and things like that, but they've improved their transportation by adding streetcars. I was reading before where they're going to have a little beltway system built in Atlanta for the streetcar system. And so that allows a lot of connectivity downtown to various places. A lot of streets in downtown Atlanta are very small. So anyhow, but the whole idea is they're going to be connecting different areas and neighborhoods using that streetcar system, similar to what Seattle is doing. So I see that as a big plus. Education. Not only is it important for colleges to be in a location because they're talking about they want an educated workforce, but it also starts K through 12. I've always said, if you do not invest in your schools, and a lot of cities have not done that, they've invested in the suburban schools, but a lot of companies don't care about the suburbs. They care about the city, because when people come to a city, they want to be able to walk to different places and show folks. Jeff Bezos was told about South Lake Union in Seattle, and he was walked around the entire neighborhood, and he said, this is perfect. And so that's what a lot of IT companies and firms like, is to be able to be in a city. Given that, they want to make sure that the talent, the education level in the city is good. So K through 12 is just as important as college and university students, right? So Atlanta has, and based on what I could check and look at, their K through 12 looked fairly good. It looked really good. And of course, you don't even have to mention their colleges and universities. They have like over 24 colleges and universities there. Georgia Institute of Technology, that by itself would be strong enough to probably pull in an Amazon. And then there's other universities similar, but they have the educated workforce there, and of course backing that up with the IT talent that's already there. Land. When you look at a lot of the cities that are vying for Amazon that truly have a chance, a shot, land is going to be one of the biggest issues. And just because you're close to downtown or you have a particular spot, people are mentioning different cities and what they're offering and this, that, and the other. But the problem is you have to think about how expensive it is to develop that land, the cost of materials in that area. You have to look at the housing cost for the workers, because that's something that Amazon is sympathetic to, I think, to a high degree, because it's been such an issue here. you have to think about all of those things. The cost of relocating utilities varies in different places. It's a huge, huge thing to undertake and understand, right? When you're developing a building, there's a lot that goes into it. Have to keep in mind too that the cheaper the land is, the more it's better, obviously, for developers. They can offer a cheaper building, which the rents are a lot cheaper for Amazon to rent out of. So it's a really good thing. Atlanta has that. So Atlanta has the cheaper land prices, considering a lot of the other places. The houses that are currently there are also a lot cheaper. I know that there's several sites that Atlanta has basically pitched, and Midtown Atlanta is like it's like a second downtown. I mean, it looks like a downtown all on its own. And then there's other places. Where did I find that at? It is High Street. There's a site that's been developed called High Street. And it's going to basically just be this huge urban high-rise development that they're currently building right now, which they're going to be retooling if Amazon chooses that particular site and they choose Atlanta. If they were to choose Atlanta, then they would obviously retool that and modify it to what Amazon would need. All of these locations you can get to using MARTA, right? The subway system. So there's nothing that has to be done in terms of planning. It's already there. It's already built. You really wouldn't have to do anything. And even if you were to, some would say, well, Midtown Atlanta is not technically downtown. It really pretty much kind of looks like it. It has a lot of amenities of what a downtown would normally have in terms of shops and stores and things to do. And the connectivity to downtown is a subway right away. Straight shot, not really that difficult, right? Incentives. A lot of places are pitching incentives in terms of money and things like that, or calling a city Amazon, or making Jeff Bezos the mayor, or all this other stuff. A lot of those gimmicks just aren't going to work. There has to be true proof to what you're going to offer, and it has to make sense, right? Georgia is supporting the effort, backing Atlanta in this, and offering $1 billion in incentives. Yes, there's other places that are offering that. Some are offering much more. Some are offering nothing. But I feel that this is kind of the middle of the road package, and it makes sense. So that's another reason why I think that this would be in Atlanta's hand. And finally, population. A lot of these places I mentioned, and I did a video prior to this that I felt was maybe a little too harsh on various different cities, and I've already pointed out different places and why I don't think it would work and why it would work and that type of thing. But I did away with that video because I didn't want people to feel like I'm being mean or trying to talk negative about where they're from. People are proud of where they're from, and they should be. So I did away with that video and chose to do this one instead, which focuses on just one specific city. But population is key. Atlanta easily fits the the million people requirement. The metro area is close to 6 million. I mean, it's 5 point something, but closer to 6, which is much bigger than what Seattle is. Seattle is right about 3.7, 3.8 million in the metro area. So putting an Amazon in Atlanta won't make Atlanta feel like a company town. Some of the smaller cities that people have mentioned that could be a shoe-in, it would be like, I'm going to mention a city, Pittsburgh. If Amazon went to Pittsburgh, it would be 1 in 20 people would have to be hired in the city of Pittsburgh. 1 in 20 people, this is what I read, would be an Amazon employee. So it would make Pittsburgh, which is a smaller market, pretty much a huge company town. And I think that Amazon has learned kind of difficult way that folks in Seattle, it seems, and the government and some citizens don't like that feeling. They don't like that feeling of feeling like a company town and that whole vibe. So putting it in Atlanta, where you already have a lot of big heavy hitters anyway, the affordable land, the incentive is not bad, education system's really good, the transit network is growing and it's also pretty good as well. has great economic power, so it's not like the city is ever going to, well, not likely that the city will ever face a massive decline. Has a huge amount of IT workers, as I mentioned, is number 4 in the country supposedly. A lot of big companies are already there, as I mentioned, you know, so they have a huge IT talent presence just due to that alone. And then the airport is a huge win because Atlanta, you can get anywhere in the world. Not to mention this used to be where they held the Olympics, so that kind of is great. Atlanta knows how to compete to get big ticket items like this. Other cities have also won the Olympics too, but that should be noted. And then the weather. Can't beat the weather there. I feel like it's extremely hot. When I went to Atlanta, it just seemed like the sun was just laying on you. It's a very hot place, but that's in contrast to what people see here. 6 months out of the year is gray skies and drizzle. Atlanta, not so much. Anyhow, that's my take. I say it's Atlanta. We'll see. It could be the city that you feel that it would be. We don't know. Hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.